So we'll give it another minute, let individuals join in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Is the audience volume not on?
Okay, so I know we have a few others joining, and I know there'll be individual. You okay, Scott?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna call the meeting to order here for the EWSD School Board on November 21st at 6:30. We have a couple other board members and individuals that will be joining in, but we do want to go ahead and get started for a really exciting meeting tonight. This is, I have lost track of how many hours have gone into so many people's schedules to come to the accumulation of tonight. So really excited for this evening, excited to have our search firm here with us, and just excited for all the work and to see the results of where we are at this evening. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And part of our agenda, as we start off with every open meeting, is comments from the public. So allow 2 minutes from each member of the public. And if you do have any comments this evening, I would just ask that you raise your hand, and then we'll go ahead and move you over into the main room for public comment, and then we'll bring you back into the viewer session. So at this time, is there any individual in the community with public comment? All right, Charles, you should be in the main room. If you wanted, I think you might have to manually unmute yourself and you're good to go.
Hi, thank you so much. Charles Medic from Westford. I have a daughter that goes to Westford Elementaries. And I just wanted to thank the board for hearing my concern, the letter that I had sent earlier today, and taking such swift action. Thank you so much. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Charles. Have a good night.
You too.
Then it looks like, thought I saw another hand raised. Is there any other members of the public who would like to make public comment tonight? All right, seeing no other hands raised, we'll go ahead and move into the main portion of our meeting, and we will have public comment again at the end of the meeting. Again, for those of you who just joined and some of the members of the public watching, I'm really excited for this evening as we jump into our board job description policy 4.2, specifically the superintendent search community engagement report out, as well as the job profile approval for this evening. I will not steal the thunder from Eliana and Deidre because there's a lot of great information. I just, on behalf of the board, just want to express our thanks for all of this information and all the engagement and all of the interaction. And it's just been incredible. And I can just really firmly say to the community that we have reached out to every possible corner of our community to really gather this input. And it has just been extremely, I've just been extremely grateful to be able to partner with Eliana and Deidre and Naja, who's not here this evening, in this process of just engaging our community in a really big decision that we have in this upcoming year. So really excited for the report that we have here. I know they're going to go ahead and share their screen. And for any members of the public that are watching this now or watching the recording, the overall slide presentation will be posted on our website, as well as the job description. So if you're unable to physically see it in the recording, that is posted to both of those places. So I will gladly turn it over to Deidre and Eliana. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and the floor is yours. Oh, Deidre, I think you're muted.
Thank you for that. Thank you for having us. And as you said, yes, we have lots of great information that we would love to share with you all. One of the things that I want to just say, there's a ton of information. If it's helpful as we're moving through and folks have questions or they want to pause and have conversation around some of the slides, we're happy to do that. We're also happy to just go all the way through the presentation and then get to the end. Whichever you prefer, we're certainly comfortable with doing, but there's a lot to celebrate here. There's a lot to share, and so we're excited to dive in and share with you all. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Can you see that okay?
Yep, looks great.
All right, awesome. So Eliana and I will be tag teaming and or popcorning, as we like to call it sometimes. I'll have some things to say. She'll certainly be in a position to color commentate for us as well. As you all know, she and I were on site connecting with you all for the site visit, and she has played an integral role behind the scenes, pulling all of this information together, engaging with folks all along the way. So we are super excited to share what we found. So first, just a quick agenda. We're gonna, as we always do, share the purpose of this superintendent search that you all created. We'll quickly provide the update on the search timeline, and then we'll dive into the heart and meat of the meeting tonight, which is the community engagement report. We'll share a little bit about the implications that we heard from the community as it relates to the job profile, and then we'll talk specifically about our next steps. So as I stated, we have a shared purpose, and this is something that the board drafted together, and it's something that we always like to come back to when we have an opportunity to connect with you all, to remind you and ground us in the reason why. So we have our goal to recruit, screen, and select the next superintendent of Essex Westford School District. And the purpose that you all landed on is to lead a respectful, transparent, and accessible superintendent search that honors and is guided by the input and needs of the community and designed to mitigate bias every step of the way. And so we are very thankful that we've been able to support you all in engaging in what we feel up to this point has definitely been very respectful, very transparent, and accessible. And so much of what we're going to share will illustrate that as well as we go forward. So just a reminder on our search timeline, we are slowly but surely moving that little red dot along the timeline. We are moving into, which is just kind of wild to think about, moving into December here pretty quickly, where we're going to get an opportunity to start identifying candidates. So tonight is really all about hearing what your community had to say, what is important to them as it relates to the next superintendent, and hear a little bit about the job profile and the key competencies that we will then be taking to start sourcing for candidates aligned to those particular competencies. And then as we move into January, there'll be semi-finalist interviews that will happen. And again, we're going to round out most likely before March, but in the month of February, really with your finalist round and your candidate selection. So things are moving along nicely. And every time I look at this timeline, I'm always just shocked and surprised at where we are in the moment that we're in, but it's really great to see how we're progressing here. So what we've accomplished and what's coming up next, we like to share where we've been and where it is that we're going. So again, we've had opportunities to communicate and outreach to your community, launch your survey to get as much input from your community as we possibly could. We had one-on-one interviews with district and community. We had focus groups and community gatherings. And so we're here at this point in time where we get to share with you again about what your community has lifted up as most important to them. And then we can get to the place of moving to approving the job profile and getting to, you know, what we think is a really fun part of this process, which is starting to source and meet candidates for this position. All right, so we'll be moving into all of the fun stuff around the community engagement report. And so just as a reminder, again, we had lots of opportunities to engage with your community starting in October, early October, and then into November. And so much of what we're going to share obviously is coming from all of the feedback that we received, whether it was written feedback, in-person feedback, and virtual feedback. So this is just a representation. You all had the goal of leading an engagement process that reached as many stakeholders across as many community groups as you could. And so we're just excited to say that you did an amazing job engaging your community. We had 5 weeks of engagement. We spanned multiple channels, including school staff, students, community partners. You offered in-person, virtual options. We had one-on-one meetings, focus groups. You get the idea. So this is representing really all of the engagement that we were able to participate in. And just a few call outs, the 22 in-person meetings, we had 189 students, staff, teachers, families, and community members. Our survey was launched from October 2nd through the 29th. So folks had 3 weeks to really share their feedback. We had 62 constituents representing the broad swath of your community. So all of that to say, you had a ton of community engagement, and in a variety of ways that we were able to accomplish that. So it's something to be really, really proud of. Just another representation of that input. So we had 3 primary activities for community input. We had a virtual community gathering. We had an in-person community gathering that had 30 attendees. We had interviews and focus groups, 66 sessions, 221 participants, and 952 total responses for your staff and community survey. So that survey again remained open and available for folks for 3 weeks. Our one-on-ones and our focus groups really gave us an opportunity to dig really deep and have deep discussions with stakeholder groups by role. So I think this is amazing. And I'll just pause here to see if Eliana wants to add anything, but I think our survey response is probably one of the best survey responses that we've seen to date for our firm. So something to be really excited about.
In a moment, we'll take a look at the response rate and how it breaks down by a few of your different stakeholder groups, which was just really impressive. But I also just want to lift up that as part of the engagement that we were able to secure. This is not at all because of just our efforts. I really want to lift up and appreciate all of the efforts of board members, staff members. I really want to call out your student board reps in particular, who really pound the pavement, joined us on visits, encouraged students, and helped set up students to complete the survey during advisory, which really boosted our numbers of student responses. And lastly, I also want to call out the translation services team, which called families and was able to secure feedback from families who speak the wide range of languages that the district supports. So it was definitely a team effort, and really appreciate it. And I think it's why we're able to see such wonderful results.
Great. Okay, so now we get to dive into some of the breakdowns, as Eliana was talking about. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm battling a little bit of a cold, so my voice is going to go in and out here tonight. But some of the next slides are going to break down some of your demographic groups and show how your survey respondents are broken down as it relates to that. So again, we had survey responses that included submissions from 656 staff and families. You can see that 297 of those were current students and 59 were graduates. We had a response rate from students that was almost 24%, which I don't think we've seen ever. So
That's our
again,
first.
amazing shout out to our student reps for really rallying and supporting that student response rate. Teacher and faculty response rate of almost 60%, which is also amazing. And then your building and central office administrators having a really strong response rate at 39%. So all of that to say that your folks were, they came out, they wanted their voice to be heard, you wanted their voice to be heard. And so this just really exciting to be able to see these types of response rates. And it speaks to, what folks have lifted up, as you'll see in some of the coming slides, in terms of what's important to them. But I think you can take comfort in knowing that voices are being heard, and this representation really speaks to the community and what it is that they want. And we'll see that as we're taking a look at some of the other slides here. So this one is representation by race and ethnicity. And as you can see, your community is very well represented in terms of the survey responses. I'm going to let Eliana explain the diversity numbers, because she has a very specific way that she shares the survey response, and I always get it wrong. So I'm going to let her.
You're so funny. You're so funny.
It is.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, to orient everyone to the screen, I know board members have had a chance to review this in advance, but certainly for any community members who are watching this, the lighter blue, and I apologize, it's not that I'm seeing the colors, they are very similar, but the lighter blue is the service response rate. So in the biggest column is your Caucasian and white response rate. The darker blue represents the district demographic. We wanted to compare to give us a sense of what portions of your community we're hearing from most frequently through the survey response. And then we always like to check against the demographics of the city as well, just as a third piece of data to, again, help us understand what the total demographics of the city are, because it was an open survey that allowed for any community member to complete and provide information. So it wasn't just for those who have kids currently in the system or who are alum of the system, but certainly open to any community members. So always looking at the demographics of the community as a whole is always really important. I think that the big piece to call your attention to is the fact that we did receive representation from across different race and ethnicities across the community. And I was really impressed to see how we were able to collect insight from across all of these. It's not always possible to get data from communities that are not in the majority at times. This isn't always the preferred modality. And again, part of what helped us secure this input is personal and direct outreach to different family members, our translation team who actually walked families through the survey and helped them complete it. Students, again, who also took the time to complete the survey during their advisory period, and whenever we were able to have them down when they were with us during the focus group. So we're really excited about the diverse perspectives and voices and experiences that we got through the survey. In a few slides, as we continue to go through, we'll be able to break down how responses look similar or different, and we'll see it by demographic group, and we'll see it by stakeholder group. So with staff members and what they had to say versus what your community members versus your students as well. Those were the primary ways that we were able to cut up the data. So one of the demographic pieces of information we asked the community to share with us was if they identified with the LGBTQIA plus community, and we're very excited to share that a large percentage of folks did share. Now, it's really difficult to assess what percentage of community members identify, so I don't have a comparison point because there isn't really a good measure, but I think it's always important to ask. In prior searches where we've included this demographic question, we've gotten very positive feedback from members of the community just saying they really appreciate being able to elevate that part of their identity. And so we were very excited that you all were open to that and that we're able to share the perspectives from this community as part of the global survey response. Now for this piece, again, we also want to make sure that we're looking into members of the community that are supporting students who they themselves identify as people who are neurodiverse, have diverse learning needs, are receiving special education services, or have a disability. And again, about 20% of your community identified in the affirmative, which for us is a good indicator that, again, we're getting good insights and perspectives about your special education services through the survey. For this data point, we did have a bit of a comparison, and we looked at the Center for Education Statistics to get an estimate of what percentage of your community does receive special education services. And I mean, statewide, it's about 18%. And so it was just a good way to test, you know, are we meeting the mark in terms of what array of your community are we hitting through the survey? And so we're very excited about the fact that we're just a little above that mark here with the survey.
All right. Thank you, Eliana.
Yeah, of course.
I think you've heard us talk about students and prioritizing student voice. And so as we take a look at the next couple of this slide, and then there will be a couple slides beyond that really generally talk about some of the things that are strengths and challenges, but also wanting to highlight specifically for your students what your students were saying was important to them. And so in taking a look at their perspectives here, just another call out for grades 3 through 12, and specifically our third graders that participated in this process, which is really amazing. I think this is the first time we've had third graders that have a part of an engagement process, and they were able to give us really concrete, very clear picture of what was important to them. So overall, in looking at your students, we had grades 3 through 12. We had every school that was represented. There were students that were enrolled in advanced classes, students receiving special education, students enrolled in flexible pathway programs as well. So a wide representation of your students. 89 of those students were able to participate in focus groups. And again, another shout out to our student reps for the survey responses. You had a great response from students. Again, 297 being current students in 9th through 12th, and then 59 of those alumni voices were reflected in the community survey as well. So in taking a look at what we've learned through all of the conversations that we've had. And so again, some of the questions that we asked specifically were, what was really important? What are the strengths? What are things that we really want to lift up? What are the things that the next superintendent may need to focus on for the next few years? And then what are the very specific skills and responsibilities that this individual will need to take on? So that's the next sort of portion of this presentation. But it was very loud and clear to us that there's a strong sense of care for students and an appreciation for the innovative offerings that are available to students. Teachers were described as caring, energetic, supportive, and creating a positive learning environment for your students. The Essex Westford School District community actively strives to make students feel valued. There's a breadth of offerings for students to have access to, and there's appreciation for innovative and diverse pathways like the early college program and CTE as examples. So there's lots of words on this screen right now, which is indicative of the conversations that we had and the breadth of information that your community was sharing with us. I just wanted to highlight just a few of those things, and we'll do so for the next slides as well. So again, wanting to highlight some of the strengths: well-prepared educators, inclusive environments, an engaged community and programs that serve as models in the state and beyond were some of the things that were cited that the community wanted to be sure to protect. So this idea around well-prepared educators really being described as going above and beyond to meet students' needs. There was call outs for the district's equity policy specifically. Many of your staff and students in the community shared this as something that they're very, very proud of. Many see the district as a model for the state for many reasons, but some of those being the universal free meals, CTE offerings, PBIS, etc. So again, a lot to be proud of, a lot of strengths here, a lot of things that the incoming superintendent will be able to come into and certainly leverage. And thinking about opportunities, there are opportunities for improvement, as there are in any district. So thinking about those opportunities for improvement, including communications about the budgetary decisions that will be coming up, addressing facility improvements, and building strength, building trust and strengthening academic outcomes. So these challenges were felt across multiple stakeholder groups. The budget was something that was brought up in almost every single conversation that we had, as well as the need for facilities improvements. We heard that pretty loud and clear and pretty consistently from everyone. Many stakeholders also felt that an emphasis on building on the current culture to prioritize transparent communication, collaboration, and this idea of trust building was something that was going to be incredibly important as well. So transitioning on to opportunities to improve consistency and accountability were also frequently cited. And this idea around accountability really at every level of the organization. So there's a desire that that the district is sure that all of the policies and procedures are consistent across all environments is something that is really important for stakeholders. And then again, this idea around accountability at every level. So there's this perception that some have that everyone is not held to the same standard. So really being sure to clarify expectations and ensuring that there's universal accountability will be really important going forward for the next superintendent. And then taking a look at your student perspectives on things to strengthen and protect. And I love this graphic. Caring for educators is something that is really important for them. Caring, energetic teachers that make school fun and help students is one of the comments that one of your fourth graders made. Programs and activities, there's lots of classes and activities and arts and sports, and all of those are really important for your students, and they support a sense of community. The hands-on opportunities and the connection to the community. So this idea that students get to go outside and have internships and hands-on opportunities and connect with the community is something that's really important to them, and they want to be able to continue to do that, along with personalized options. So this flexibility and opportunities to own their own learning. Many of them talked about the flex block and they liked that, and allowing them to explore their interests. So making sure that those personalized options are maintained is going to be important going forward. And then PBIS and other incentives. So students seem to be really motivated by the PBIS in place at their schools, and they shared examples of rewards earned, or them working towards that those rewards and making good choices. So those were the
There's a
things
lot
that
of conversation about that one with the,
Yeah.
the early elementary students.
Yes. So those are the things that your students want to be sure that are protected as the next superintendent makes their transition in. Eliana, anything you'd like to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you for asking. I think the only thing to lift up is just the amount of resonance that there was between what your students were sharing as the strengths and areas to protect and what came up from the broader community, because there's a lot of alignment in terms of how it shows up. What we really love to hear is how their experiences are reflected, and so just adds additional color to the feedback that we just saw on the previous slides.
Okay. So here's another busy one. um, this is your students' perspectives on things that are areas to improve, and certainly alignment with some of these as well. And we generally saw strong alignment with all of your constituency groups, from board all the way down through students. So student voice and input. So the students are really looking for greater visibility and engagement with the district leadership. So opportunities to be part of the conversation, be at the table, and have their voice heard is something that's going to be really important for them going forward. They also shared the some improvements around academics and programming. So challenges with the Bell schedule and conflicts for student athletes. So wanting to be sure that folks have the opportunity to engage in all of those activities and still, have the ability to be with school. So some of their comments around, having to take some of those extracurriculars before school starts, which is creating challenges for them in terms of transportation and ability to participate. So wanting to be sure that that is something that's lifted up as an opportunity. And then there were some questions that came up about course requirements. So some 8th grade students are doing both algebra and 8th grade math. And can students in varsity sports get PE credits for participating? So just again, some areas of suggestion from your students. And then taking a look at the policies and procedures. Some of the things that were cited: inconsistent grading policies, some of the course offerings, class expectations and requirements, which also may go back to the universal call out around accountability. Some students shared examples from their experience, which is inconsistent with between elementary school and middle school. And then clarity and consistency again around discipline policy. So students shared differing consequences for similar infractions. So consistency between schools is going to be another area of improvement that's going to come up. I think it was another one that we're seeing alignment in some of the other areas, but just this idea of your district coming together and your schools feeling like they're one unified system. I think there's still work to be done there, and students are certainly lifting up some of what your other community members are sharing as well. We talked a lot about facilities and operations, so those capital improvements and repair to your buildings, upkeep on playgrounds, et cetera. So that's not something new. HVAC systems, breaking down, those types of things. So again, all things facilities, I think you guys have are well informed on what's important there. And then the idea around inclusion and belonging. So many students talked about inclusivity as a strength, but there were also students that reflected on the need to ensure that there was more safety. And when we talk about safety, it's not only physical safety, but psychological safety, right? And inclusion for students, particularly for New Americans, Black students, and LGBTQIA+ students. So greater support for language access was something that was also noted. So again, student perspective on areas to improve. You should really be proud of your students and what it was that they were able to share with us. This is, again, is very much in alignment with other community groups that we've spoke to. Just pausing to see if Eliana wants to add anything else.
The
You're
only
good?
other thing I'll lift is that I was really just impressed with the level of, maturity and the understanding of the complexities of the system as a whole, because as students were sharing some of the, challenges and areas for improvement, for example, with the schedule, they were able to speak to the benefits of the later start time. This is, speaking with the high schoolers and understanding the reason for it. What they were articulating to us was, the kind of ripple effect that it had in other aspects of their lives. So while they appreciate the time to get in a little later, it's had some other downstream effects. And so I think, going back to that first priority around student voice and input, and how just really understanding the student experience could help lift up how, some policies may be having unintended consequences. But just wanted to add that additional piece because it was just really impressive to see how they were able to really diagnose the issue and the complexities of what's happening. And again, they brought in issues around coordinating transportation and the challenges around the financial aspect as well, which is really impressive to see the depth of understanding that was coming from them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is really speaking to the important context that we think really anyone coming into the school district, but particularly the superintendent that's going to be making the transition. There were a few key things that just kept coming up in conversations as we were engaging with the community. So when we think about some of the things that will be important when someone makes a transition in and is trying to get the lay of the land, these would be the things that were really lifted up as it relates to the Essex-Westford School District context, right? So the educational regulations and financing for schools was the most cited area of context that folks think is important to understand. And our stakeholders spoke up and said that they really need a leader who can clearly communicate and collaborate with that community to navigate those specific challenges and make sure that there's support for them going forward. I think generally speaking, and this is probably something that resonates with a lot of people across the country, is this perceived lack, whether it's perceived or whether it's real lack of support for public education from the state legislature, and how that shows up in the lack of funding for public schools. So when we think about what's important for the superintendent to know, what skill sets we're looking at as someone's coming in, this is certainly, again, also something that is important, will be important for them to understand. And then the impact and the context of the merger. So this idea of you all coming and becoming one district, but there's still sort of some underlying feelings of still separation, right? And so really knowing that still exists, that there is the legacy of the merger, and that you all are continuing to work towards this unified one district is going to be important for the next administrator. And then the equity policy, which stands out as, again, we heard about the equity policy, I think, as much as we did about the budget. I mean, it was almost in every conversation. And it's a tremendous point of pride for much of your community. There is work that obviously, continued improvement and work that can be done to better educate about the equity journey that you all are on, the purpose of the policy, and how to prioritize greater education for staff and community around the specific policies and procedures. And I think someone coming in that has an understanding of that and can, again, we're talking about trust building, we're talking about clear communication, we're talking about securing buy-in for the community. As skills and attributes will be something that's important. Okay. Now we get to take a look at, again, we had in the survey, we had folks, talk specifically about the top 3 or the top priorities that they wanted to see in their next superintendent. And these are the top 3 areas that were identified for your next superintendent. So taking a look, many folks thought that it was very important to put the best interest of students first in all decisions, support consistent, positive staff and student culture across all schools, and promote continued growth in student outcomes and achievement. And this was a 5-point scale, right, Eliana?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these are all things that were pretty important for your community group. So we also wanted to look by stakeholder group and see where there was alignment. So the top 3 areas that were identified as priorities for students, staff, and your community members, there's pretty good alignment here. And so if you see across each one of the groups, there's putting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that there's clear alignment around the idea of putting students first. Was something that came up across all 3 in the top 3 priorities. The notion of continuing to promote student outcomes was like number 2 for students, rightfully so. That was a top priority. That was like the number 1 thing for your community and caregivers. And interestingly, ensuring sustainable district finances came up as a number 3 for students, which we thought was really interesting. And that was like number 2 for the community. The one distinction I'll just add was that, building and sustaining trust was the kind of one differing area that came up as we looked at the feedback from your staff members. A great deal of alignment throughout. And then we broke it up by demographic, by racial, ethnic demographics, to also just get a better sense of how people are thinking about these priorities. And, a little bit of a difference here, which again is a really interesting data point to know that, for community members who identify as Caucasian and white, much of the feedback or the priorities centered around prioritizing students and culture and trust. Whereas for your BIPOC communities, the themes resonated more around student outcomes and achievement as a top line priority, district financing, and then again, really having experience with budgets and navigating those operational areas. So just interesting to know, and we always like to share and to look at where there might be, again, similarities or differences.
Yeah. And then you had in your survey, we always give folks the opportunity to share whatever else they would like to share. And so we've got some open text responses. And so one of the questions was EWSD will be successful if we accomplish these 3 things within the next 5 years. And you had a little over 2,100 ideas that were submitted. So if you look at those in terms of the most survey responses at 354 were to improve academic performance, rigor, and curriculum for all students. Next, which is a really big surprise to all of you, I think, is to better manage the budget, including keeping cuts away from the classroom and increasing efficiencies. So that came in as a second. And then after that, attracting and retaining high quality staff, followed by engage, support, and listen to students. And then again, building trust with the community and families through transparent and improved communications and collaboration. So again, open text, what ideas do you have? What's going to be important to accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years? And then next question, anything else you would like to share about the search and selection of the next superintendent? 365 comments were provided, and so the following are the top themes. So listening to and supporting staff and students, which again, very much alignment. We've heard that earlier. Focusing on education and academics, visiting schools and connecting with students, staff, not just the principal. So this idea of visibility and really getting to know staff and students as well. And then being mindful and more transparent about budget and finances. So again, real alignment to some of the other things that we shared already. Okay, should we do a drum roll? Some of the implications for the job profile is what we would like to share next. And so, as you remember in the survey, we talked about the top skills that folks thought were most important for the next superintendent, and your stakeholders prioritized clear communicator and collaborator, a leader who welcomes feedback and engages in self-reflection, and responsive to staff and community questions and comments. So very, also, good alignment with what it is that we're hearing around generally, or the comments in terms of the skills and responsibilities of a leader that you all are looking for. So we also
similar. Oh, go ahead. I was going to give you a break because I know you're going.
No,
so we like to do a similar structure and break out from what we did with the key priorities around the critical skill set. So here we're looking at the critical skill set divided up by stakeholder group. And again, there are some real clear themes that continue to pop up as a top 3 for your constituents, no matter how you cut the data. The one outlier I wanted to pull out, because like 2 out of the 3 indicators were all the same, whether you're asking students, staff, or community. Students really called out empathetic and fair as an important skill set in conversations. And then the other area that was kind of prioritized by staff was, again, that the responsive to staff and community questions and comments, which very fair given the role that they play. But otherwise, and then the other one that stood out for among your community and caregivers is just understanding and effectively managing district operations and finance. But to find such similarities across all 3 was a really important for us as we move through. And then when we looked at it by race and ethnicity, we were also, again, just really pleasantly surprised, because in that one, and we had to like double check it because I hadn't seen it line up that closely before, but it was exactly the same in terms of those critical skills, which again, it's a good confirmation for our team as we work to prioritize the competencies that are highlighted in the job profile.
Mm-hmm. So in taking a look at and you all have had an opportunity to review that, these are the responsibilities, the what, and the skills and experiences, the how, and so these are the general categories, the high level categories, and as you've seen, there are very specific descriptors under each one of these categories. It's important to note that you're going to see all of the critical skills that were identified in the previous slides are represented in that full job profile. They may be as a headline, or they may be a skill that's captured in one of those sub bullets in the job description, but it's all reflective. And so this is giving you sort of the high level view of when you're looking at the job profile for your next superintendent. It was important that this individual is going to be able to establish a clear vision and strategy that ensures students attain the skills needed to succeed, that they develop a human resource leadership model that prioritizes equity, efficiency, and effectiveness, that they serve as a visible culture builder that strengthens and nurtures environments that are trustworthy, inclusive, accessible, and welcoming for all members of the community, that they steward the success, sustainability, and equity of the district's finances and operations, and they serve as a champion and advocate for healthy and safe environments. So those are the key responsibilities based on all of the feedback that you all have received today, that we've received, that really these encapsulate all of the things that we've heard in terms of the responsibilities of this individual, the main things. And then when we're looking at the skills and experiences, how is this person going to come and do all this work? It's going to be important for them to be able to be an effective collaborator, coalition builder, and communicator, servant leader, an innovative and an inspirational leader, an accountable change manager, and a data-driven systems thinker. So that's really the crux of the what and the how for your next leader as they transition. And that will be obviously the things that we will be focused on as we're sourcing for candidates and as we're screening in that first round and subsequent rounds. It will be against these specific competencies. Okay, we are can you believe it? So what's most pressing for us to get taken care of? The approval of the job profile is a key next step, and as soon as we have the approval of that, our team will go ahead and post, and then we begin to do some of the fun part of this work, which is begin to engage with applicants and candidates, advertise the role, and really get to work actively recruiting. I think coming up for us is confirming upcoming meetings and protecting our time so that we all can fully engage in this process. It'll be here before we know it, and you all will be engaging in interviews. So that's exciting to think about as well. And then continuing to work with you all in designing the specifics to the selection phases as we go forward. So I will pause there, Robert. That's all we have, and we'll turn it back over to you to open it up for questions.
Sure. So I'd be happy to open up to any questions for the board, and also I just want to shout out a couple of pieces within there, just to highlight, like, there were so many inroads to all parts of our community in Essex, Westford, and Essex Town. So again, like throughout all those areas and throughout the schools, I know they touched upon it a little bit of like the different focus groups that they had, but like there was a focus group at every school with students. There was connections with staff. There was connections with parents. So really we wanted to focus on getting out to our entire community because we are one district. We are one unified district, and we wanted to make sure that everyone had that equal voice throughout. The other piece of that as well, and this is again a shout out to the translation services, just making that space and availability for individuals. I think this whole process has just strengthened us as a district because now we have an opportunity to kind of like replicate this in the future through budget, through facilities. Like we've started to build these muscles and really go out and engage. And the big thing I look at when we started all this back in August, the big piece of feedback we were getting from our community is they said, when you're doing work as a board, we want you to engage us like in a high way, not just like some engagement here and there. And I really feel confident in what we did. I feel confident in the amount of engagement that we had. And I think there was a question that had come up at the beginning of this process is how do we know that we've engaged enough to get a good read on is this good to move forward? And I can say from my perspective, I feel that we had more than the saturation rate than what we needed to be able to get a good read and just seeing the coherence across so many of these results and just the clear answers, but then also hearing it drill down into some of the different areas. It just adds so much to this whole process. And I think that this presentation itself, along with the details from all of this, is just a great tool for whoever the next superintendent is to walk into, have that as context, and just know our community. So I think I'm just really excited about this. I think this is a huge accomplishment, something that we should be extremely proud of just as a community as a whole. And just the alignment is incredible, regardless of like the different stakeholder groups. Like there is just such an alignment of bringing this all together. So I just want to say thank you. Jemima, go ahead.
And Deirdre, you and Eliana were not at our board meeting, but the student reps talked about how happy they were to be able to give input and how pleased the other students were. I know this personally from a kid who was pulled from the 5th grade, and he was so excited that he got asked. And then he said he wants more lunch.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Andre?
Yes, everybody's providing accolades on the response rate. What I'm curious about is this response rate in line with the population of the 3 communities, or have you seen a lesser response rate from communities that are larger in population?
Within Essex Westford, you mean?
Yes.
Andre?
Yes.
We didn't ask in the survey, we didn't ask where or like what school you're connected with or what part of the community you represent. So from the survey itself, we don't have that. What we do have is the insights we gathered from the meetings at all the schools. So from the focus group feedback, we have a more of a sense of having had opportunities to touch on all different parts of the community, because we did meet with educators. Our first group during the visit was at Westford, which is like such a treat to kick off the day there. And that was one of the larger student groups we got to meet with. So that was really exciting to start off with them. And they were on point. They were just the best. So we were able to kind of target the different parts of the community through the in-person focus groups.
Actually, let me clarify that. It was looking at the population in total of the community, because it is 3 different communities: the city of Essex Junction, Essex Town, Westford. And since we are home to 3,500 students, it would imply that we would have a greater response from community members than, or maybe I'm reaching for the sky, but the question again, is this something that was a stellar, but have you realized lesser of a response from more populated communities?
I see what you mean. It doesn't always pan out that way, Andre,
Sure.
and I wish we had a better metric for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the larger communities, it's just hard. One, it's harder to bring people together, particularly in person, because of geographic challenges and distance. We were, and the other piece I'll share is that it's a little harder to measure like the size of your actual community, because it is much more fluid, and it encompasses people who are actively engaged in what's happening in the school district, either because they themselves are alum, they have children, or they're just active community members. There's some who are just disengaged, so it's harder to say this is the response rate we're hoping from the community at large. The only parts of your constituents that we can control are the number of students, because we've got that enrollment data and we've got the staff numbers. So it's harder to say on the community front, like what's a good response rate. I can check on some other comparisons for you, Andre, so that we can share back with you. But I know your question, and I think it's a really good one. I just haven't found a good way to really provide a good indicator for it, because what encompasses the community is much more, it's a bit more nebulous and harder to tabulate for the purposes of this kind of study. I'll take a look, because I love your question. I think it's an important one. Thank you for that. That's a great one.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Yep, Scott, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. First of all, I know this takes a good bit of time to collect the data and come up with a story that you shared with us tonight. I just want to be devil's advocate for a second. Sometimes when you do things like this, and we're going to go out and we're going to take 900 surveys and have 15 meetings and talk to 80 community members or 120 in every single town, you end up with the same top 3 attributes that you wanted of the superintendent as maybe 3 of us could have guessed without doing any of that work. That's kind of a negative view of this, but what do we say to the public if there's a perception that you do all these big grandiose things, but you end up with a pretty vanilla job description? So maybe if you could help me, how unique are these top 3 things? How unique is this job description, perhaps, as it would stand out against previous engagements you've had with out-of-state clients?
So I'll start out with the piece about the top 3 without doing anything. Certainly you could get there. Mm-hmm. The thing that's more important is your community is speaking to us about what's important to them. And it's not about you or anyone else guessing what's important or what they would highlight as important. And this job profile, I mean, if we look at other profiles, there may be things like, somebody who's a strong communicator, but servant leader is probably the first time I've ever seen this on a job description, job profile that I've created. Somebody with a data-driven, maybe decision-making, but maybe not systems thinker. I'm trying to think of
the accountability piece is one that stood out here much more so as well, and how you all talked about it.
You feel that where we have come to land here is unique, and the only reason we are here is because of the feedback from the community.
Yes, 100%. I would say.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
The other thing, just to kind of add to that too, is that, and just especially for community members, watching, is so you see this slide right here. These are the high level bullet points. each of these are drilled down much deeper in the job profile. And the other aspect of all the engagement that we did, especially amongst staff members, is that then helps inform when we're going through the interview process of not just a situation where you say, you know, how are you a data-driven systems thinker? And
Yeah.
anyone could kind of give a flowery answer to that one. But instead, through the responses and through the interactions with the community, with the staff, with administration as is now, that has helped give the search firm some specific concrete examples of here's a situation. How would you demonstrate working through this? Or like demonstrate your proficiency in this area by a past experience. And as they describe that past experience, all of this community engagement, we can now kind of cross compare that and say, all right, they gave experience of making a budget, but wow, they took it a step further and explained some of these other areas that really will resonate with this community versus, oh yeah, that budget experience wasn't anything like this context here. So it drills down into a lot deeper areas that help inform the questions and help inform the rest of the process so that it's not in some job searches that you see just kind of give the flowery answers, oh, that sounds great, but actually hasn't been able to demonstrate how it fits within the context of our district specific needs.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Robert. I anticipate receiving a question like this,
For sure.
and I think this dialogue helps me be prepared to address it.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a great point. And I think like, you know, if you just looked at this slide first glance, and that's why I wanted to emphasize for the community that, you know, watch this later on, that it's that whole idea of these drill down deeper, these then inform the interview process, and they inform like the specific questions that are asked to then drill down to make sure that they are actually able to demonstrate these areas, not just give an answer of yes, servant leader, period.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that, Robert. I think that's a really key distinction when we talk about how it is that we're interviewing and what types of interview activities. It's really critically important to know that everything is performance, evidence, and demonstration based, right? So you can give a flowery answer, but it's probably not going to help you in the process. Being able to really demonstrate a time, you know, or share a time, or even, you know, and this is part of what the board will be engaging in terms of selection, stage selection design is really, you know, is there a performance task specifically that you want, you know, candidates to engage in, that kind of thing. So it is important and helpful, I think, for the community to know that as candidates are being vetted, that it is vetted against performance and demonstration based activities that are aligned to these competencies.
Those are good questions.
Any other questions from board members? All right, so tonight we will actually be taking two actions, one around the job profile, and secondly around confirming additional costs for search websites that you all received. So one of the things, I know each of you have received the job profile, and for the community that is going to be posted as well. The board has had time to review this. And again, they go back to those general competencies and skill set that was just listed on that slide, but drilled down deeper so the community is able to look at that. For the sake of presentation or anything tonight, again, the presentation that was just given gives context to the overall job profile. Tonight, what the board needs to do is take action to adopt and accept that, or I'm sorry, to approve that job profile that then can be posted tomorrow. So what I would like to do first is make a motion to get it on the table, and then we'll open it up for any discussion. So would anyone be willing to make a motion to adopt or to approve the job profile that
I'll
has
make
been
the motion.
submitted. All right, Laura has made the motion. At this point, I'd like to open up to any discussion before we take a final vote. And again, board members have had a chance to review it, give feedback in advance of this evening. Just want to open up to any final questions or discussion, and then we'll take a vote. All right, seeing no discussion, and just for transparency, again, the board has had a chance to deeply review this. This is not, we're not glossing over it this evening. There's been multiple hours of put into forming it, creating it, revisions to bring it forward to this evening, which will then be posted for the community. So seeing no discussion, and with the motion on the table, I'll now take the roll of all in favor. Please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Okay, all opposed?
Aye.
Scott, you're approved though, correct?
I approve. I couldn't get it off mute in
Perfect,
time
okay.
before you did the nays.
I just wanted to double check. Perfect. Okay, and then any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So that job posting will be posted tomorrow. The second motion at this point that I'd be looking for is for the board to approve Alma to post to the paid posting pages, which amounts to a total of $2,182. I'm sorry, $2,189.63.
I'll make such a motion to approve, to vote on that motion.
Perfect. And then any discussion, the one thing again I can bring up, this will bring us to being posted on 49 different pages. So between different job posting boards and then job posting sites as well. That'll put us out there on 49 different pages.
Only discussion I have would just be to fall back around with Deidre and Eliana. I did not know if they were able to get information from the board question from Tuesday night around the paid sites. The question was around just basically what is the normal return we get for applicants on the paid sites. Because I know those are the ones that we talked about, you said were the best avenues for getting applicants.
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the we're looking into it. One of the things that we're working through, it's really hard for us sometimes because our site redirects the applicant to our site. So in terms of following, so our team is digging into it just to see if there's a number that we can pull to share with you all in terms of clicks and views and that type of thing. So we'll see what we can get back to you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate
it.
Christine?
Yeah, I was the one who raised that question. So, and I appreciate you digging into it. The impetus of the question is just so myself can understand and then the community can understand what that money is for. So what is it going to yield? And what is the purpose behind that amount? So if you could just clarify real quick, what life would be like without paying it versus what it gives us access to.
Yes. So there, I think there's definitely many sites that you can post for free, and there are other sites that are paid, and some of the paid posting sites are specific to whether it's superintendent associations. LinkedIn is one of them. There's sites that, quite frankly, get more traffic. And so if you're looking for this specific job profile, you're going to post on these particular sites because people that are looking for these particular positions are going to go to those sites and look for these jobs. Absent of that, we just may not have as much traffic. in terms of folks that are going to, know and have access to this position being open. We certainly are doing our, we would be doing our sourcing, et cetera. I think it just narrows sort of the net that you have if you're not posting on those sites that just get that routine traffic. For people who are interested in positions like this, they're going to naturally go to those sites and look for those positions.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what we're paying for is not much in this world is free, especially the way our economy works. But there's a service behind it that we're paying for, which is people to act, where a website is going to push it out to more people, therefore be more visible. There's more users. So it's like I don't want to call it a service, but essentially it's access and a service of what we're paying for.
Yes. Because it'll, some of it is our associations.
That's a big one of it. And it's access to those networks, which is what is really driving a lot of that cost.
Thank you for that clarification. I wasn't meant to put you on the spot, but I think the clarity was important.
A great question.
Yeah.
The other part with that too, just to add, so Naja, who helps kind of get all these pieces together, did mention that these are really academic and education specific. Whereas a lot of the other posting sites, it's a job posting site in comparison. These are really where these individuals would be. But then also brought up a really good point of, as these jobs are posted there might be colleagues of individuals on that site seeing these postings that then share with their colleagues. So it's really essentially paying for the network. Yep. Yep. Andre?
Yes, haven't been on the board when we engaged in the superintendent search in which Beth was hired. I feel that the search was not as far-reaching as what these sites are implying that they would be, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we may have had only one candidate from out of state and the other two were in-state. So I think I'm excited to see it's going out, reaching out further. So I'd like to share that with the board, because I think that's important to go as far as we can.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
So if not seeing any other discussion, Marlon, I missed who made the initial motion to get on the table. I apologize.
Andre did.
Andre, okay.
Andre.
Perfect, thank you. So the motion is on the table to expense the $2,189.63 for additional posting sites for the superintendent search. So I'd be looking for all in favor, signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 All opposed? And abstain. Okay, motion passes. So in terms of next steps, and this is just informational for the community as well, this will be posted tomorrow and then continue to be posted. We will put the link up on the superintendent search page. So community members and board members, feel free to share this out amongst your networks as well, and LinkedIn. In addition to that, the posting in itself, I just want to really highlight that it all drives back to a singular page that is on the Alma website. So that'll be where the main job posting lives. So really any individuals will go there. If individuals reach out and say they're interested, feel free to direct them right straight to that site. The other thing with this as well, I know there's been questions from the community of what's the next step in terms of engagement. In December, we will be sending out in essence, nomination form for either nominating yourself or other individuals to serve as one of the interview panels that will happen later into January and February. So that will be going out to the community via a survey and kind of a nomination form for individuals that would be interested in engaging in the search process that way. Outside of that, that's kind of the action that we have on the superintendent search at the moment. And that's where we are, at least for the next 30 days. while the job is out. And then Alma will be going through and vetting, kind of doing the initial screening with candidates and individuals as they submit their applications. The other thing, just as a note, our next meeting will be not on December 3rd, actually. It will be on December 12th from 6:30 to 9:30. So we'll make sure that we get that edited in the minutes and just have that put out to the community correctly. And the only other mention that I would like to give out to the community and to board members as well, our budget survey does close on December 6th. As of right now, we have 703 responses. So the challenge is out to the community. You just saw how many responses we got on the superintendent search survey. So here we are. With that, yep, Andre.
Yes, with regards to the interviewers, call them as such, will the interview be recorded so that others could actually watch the interview and not necessarily participate as part of the interviewing team?
Yep. So we have interview. Well, so depending on what part of the interview process, yes and no, depending on what group is interviewing, or if it's like the board interviewing different groups. Some things will be recorded, some things will not, based upon the size of the group. All that information will be sent out to the community so they can see the whole step of the process. The part where the community would be interviewing would be in the final stage of the process, in that interview process, and those would be recorded, and then individuals in the community or board members could watch them as well if they weren't able to make it.
Okay.
But if someone's on the interview panel, they'll be engaging in that. They won't watch the interview later. If they're on the panel, they'll be doing the interview.
I think I was more referring to at present we have 10 board members, and I'm not sure if all 10 board members will be participating as interviewers, and if such, I think that might be that's going to be a big panel. Right. So that's the question I was leading to, whether that portion would be recorded so that as board members that we could watch it. Or,
yep.
Okay. Very good.
Yep, that one absolutely will, because you're right. Like, especially with like the second round of candidates, if there's like 12, 20 or whatever number within there, we wouldn't be able to get all 10 of us together for potentially 20 different meetings. So we'll break up responsibilities across the board so we can kind of divide and conquer, but then those recordings would go back to all board members to be able to review.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep. So with that, I just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you to our community. Thank you, Deidre and Eliana, for compiling information. Again, board members, I just encourage you, as you review that information, it's great for the superintendent search, but also that's some great information as we enter into budget season as well. A lot of pieces, data points to think about. With that, there's no executive session this evening. I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all for everything. Have a great evening. And if we don't see you before, everyone enjoy the vacation week next week and the holidays with everyone.
Absolutely.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good one.
Bye,
Happy holiday. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.